This was my house a few months ago. In the great hail damage of August 11th, 2023, I was one of hundreds of homes that have since kept roofing crews busy. The work on mine lasted a few months because I also had insurance money to replace damaged siding. When the crew tore it off, they discovered solid cedar planks from the original house, built more than 100 years ago, that were in good shape. So rather than put new siding on, they restored what was already there, repaired spots that had rot, and overall did a fantastic job transforming my house. It now looks like this. Yay. It's easy for us to recognize the power of tender, loving repair when it comes to material things, that we can transform an existing structure into something stronger without simply tearing it down. It is less easy to remember that people can be transformed in the same way. The energy of a small village, or sometimes just a stranger on a street corner, can apply tender, loving repair to reshape life. There were at least a dozen people working on my house over time. I got to know a crew of 3 fairly well because I hired them to do repair work inside my house to prepare for the Ukrainian family that arrived at my place on July 1st. A fabulous team, by the way, of 15 people from First Unitarian Society, led by Bob Adderholt, is helping that family transform their lives here. It's a great example of how a village forms to give other people a new foothold. I could give a lovely talk about that, but I do have a different focus today. The 3 men in their 30s who worked on the exterior and then interior of my house all had addiction issues. This is not uncommon in that industry. They lived together, worked together, and partied together. One of them was ready to quit that lifestyle. Travis has given me permission to share his story today. Travis grew up sleeping on the floor of a mobile home in Lakeville. He showed me his neighborhood a few weeks ago. He signed up for the Marines at age 17 and experienced hearing loss driving vehicles, which I now know are called 7 tons, to burn pits during the Iraq War. He used drugs to deal with a tumultuous childhood and PTSD from the war, to feel numb from grief, and to feel momentary joy on the emptier weeks when he did not have custody of his young son. Travis lost his dad last year to an opioid overdose, which is also how one of his closest friends died. He was very close to his cousin Sarah, who committed suicide years ago at age 24. Alcoholism is prevalent in his family. His addiction was cocaine. When we get up close and personal with people, it's easier to remember that no one is simply one thing. Travis's story is not only about addiction. I've seen it up close. Travis also is a fantastic dad to his very curious, artistic, and adoring 8-year-old son, James. I'm so happy they were able to be here today. I invited Travis to my home in April for dinner with one of my staff members and her husband. My coworker also is a vet who came from a rough childhood. We talked about Travis's life and the vet's benefits he could be claiming. Travis needs legal advice because his home is in foreclosure. His ex has been backtracking on their 50-50 custody agreement. When they split up, he offered to pay child support despite the equal time arrangement because he made decent money at the time. After he lost his construction job last year, he took work with a friend that was much less well paid, and he fell behind in payments. His driver's license was taken away a few months ago because he could no longer afford child support. A policy, by the way, that I do not understand. Can somebody explain to me that the rationale for taking away transportation from someone who's supposed to be earning money? I don't get that. Travis was so impacted by the attention he got that night at my house, he's told me, that his life and needs mattered to people he didn't know, that after I drove him back home that night and he found another party going on, Travis realized he didn't want to stay there anymore. He came back to Minneapolis with me and stayed for 5 days until he could make a new plan. He slept deeply, he talked deeply, he wept deeply. I even saw him laugh deeply for the first time when we went to hear Burning Blue Rain And Lewis's mother said something funny and bold. It was an incredibly vulnerable 5 days. Now a new village is forming around Travis. He's building his own construction business to be able to keep more of the funds that used to go to his bosses, to be able to pay people who also need a village. Our own FUS realtor, Bob Gendreau, put him in touch with Adele Hansen to polish her wood floor and is suggesting other work. My neighbor hired him to build a deck. My friend Barbara in Northfield, who's listening, is introducing him to locals who need work done. He's contacted previous employers to bid on framing garages and new homes. Because everything can be transformed with the help of a village, because we all need to know that someone's looking after me and I them. Since Travis is now a good friend of mine, I picked up a book by Sebastian Junger that was recommended to me, Tribe, to better understand the mentality of a different kind of village, people in the military who learn to trust each other. Junger wrote, "In combat, soldiers all but ignored differences of race, religion, and politics within their platoon. It's no wonder many of them get so depressed when they come home." Junger wrote about a collective time that I experienced up close. I lived in New York City, a few blocks from the World Trade Center, when it was attacked on September 11th. I saw the dust clouds as the buildings went down. I saw that giant city stand still, strangers huddled around taxicabs, trying to figure out what happened. I saw memorials go up, pictures of loved ones with notes. Have you seen this person? The slow motion of collective grief lasted for months. Junger's research found that New York's suicide rate dropped by 20% in the 6 months following the attacks. The murder rate dropped by 40%. Pharmacists saw no increase in first-time patients filling prescriptions for anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications. In other words, the nature of the collective good, banding together, alleviated many of the symptoms we are increasingly experiencing in an unhealthy world. Junger wrote, "We are not good to each other. Our tribalism is to an extremely narrow group of people, our children, our spouse, maybe our parents. Our society is alienating, cold, mystifying. Our fundamental desire as human beings is to be close to others, and our society does not allow for that. My privilege as a writer is to listen to people's stories. Sometimes I write about addictions and mental health and abusive environments from afar. And I've stood up on this stage for 10 years, essentially talking about how our resilience comes from being part, not apart, from our village. That if we could see that our energy comes from the whole, not the individual, we would have a much healthier world. But I'm going to be honest, I myself am a very protective individual. I avoid conflict, I sidestep pain, I basically avoid intimate relationships when you look someone in the eye and tell your truth. People I interview tell me their truths. I sit in the corner and observe, I take notes. I purposely raised 2 kids on my own, and I'm now an empty nester who misses them. My resilience with business struggles comes from a childhood with 2 supportive parents and the resources they have provided. Travis is extremely grateful that his stepping stone in my house helped him relaunch the future he wants to provide for his son. He says that someday he'll repay me for opening up a door he was so ready to walk through. But he's already repaid me. Travis is a 36-year-old former Marine with tattoos who smokes, watches boxing, relaxes by watching war movies, drives big trucks, and has had issues with cocaine. He also is the person who has shown me how to be vulnerable, because we are not simply one thing. He's become a great text buddy when he doesn't let his phone die and when he's not with his son James. He makes me laugh deeply when we talk on the phone. When I was agitated a few times lately, he was the one I reached out to. When I was overwhelmed with the culmination of bad news, tough news, I called him and cried. It's a profound gift to have someone you can be your ugly self with. Some people build those trusting relationships easily, and I do not. Everyone needs to know that when we let go for a little while, someone is there, that someone is looking out for me and I them. For people without a tribe, it might need to be strangers in the community who will notice them in distress on a park bench, who will make a comment at a street corner to offer a needed perspective, who will introduce them to the right people to talk about how to get out of a hole. We can discover our talent, play music at KJ Hideaway or Blues Saloon, and make someone's day. We can create a village with others to help a Ukrainian family get a foothold. We are all part of the solution. We all need to know someone is looking out for me and me them, even if they're strangers. Thank you.
I know I'm called to do the announcements, but I have to say, can we just give Mikki Morrissette a round of applause? And I'm just going to say in short, Travis, healing looks amazing on you, sir. I like people who engage in transformation, and I have to say to your son, you will always see a good example of transformation when you look at your dad. So remember that. All things are possible. And before I go too, let's say thank you to our wonderful musicians.